Hello, welcome. Welcome to Steve. Welcome to all of you in this another talk for day 2 of the symposium, where we're looking at, in general on this day, we're looking at what is this big picture of healing that we are feeling a need for on our planet right now, in our own lives, in our own selves, and then in our world. And there's so many layers to all of that. And so the big topic that Steve and I are going to be discussing is embracing the shadow. And Steve, I'm so happy to have you here. And I love connecting with you on this heart level, soul level. Yeah, and I'm just really happy to be able to drop into this needed conversation. So before we start, is it okay if I just read your bio so people know a little about you?
Certainly. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So, so your bio is in first person. So I'm going to translate into third person, which might take me a second, but so Steve Wolfson has lived as a seeker from his early years. The 60s spoke to him. He made it to Haight-Ashbury for the 1967's Hippie Summer and attended Woodstock. Awesome. He lived in a spiritual commune for 10 years. Later, he raised a family and gained computer skills. Pluto transited his ascendant in the mid-90s, and his life dramatically changed. He moved to Australia, then Oregon, and discovered and was profoundly affected by the work of evolutionary astrologer Jeffrey Wolf Green. He studied with Jeffrey for a long time and developed an astrological practice, helping clients align with their soul purpose. In recent years, his direction has been led internally, dealing with your own stuff, his own stuff, unresolved. His current focus is in helping people emotionally integrate the life changes that evolutionary astrology reveals. Wonderful. So to sum it up, you are an astrologer, and you are also coming from this, maybe my words, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. You're not only practicing evolutionary astrology, you're also coming from more of a soul-based soul reality.
Like soul experience. Soul orientation, and also, I mean, from my personal journey and with others, the healing of the wounded places that we have inside of ourselves, bringing them to awareness. It's kind of my orientation became astrology is amazing at pointing out where I'm intended to go, what direction I'm intended to take, but astrology in and of itself can't tell me how to make the changes that it's pointing out I need to make. So my orientation kind of grew into, first, I need to make these changes. And then as I have been making the changes, I have developed the ability through experience to help other people, perhaps focus them, is one way to say it, on their own journeys. We each have to do the process ourselves, but it's not the most common thing in our culture to really understand what to do with a lot of the feelings, emotions, fears, repeating patterns that arise. And I look at it from the soul perspective, not merely from a psychological perspective, because that's my internal orientation.
Mm-hmm. And what does that mean to you, the soul perspective as opposed to the psychological?
It's the bigger picture. The first question is, what are we doing here in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
which to me is completely individual for every single person. It starts, which I have experienced at times, that there is an eternal part within us. I mean, my perspective incorporates what people call reincarnation, that there's a living, breathing thing inside of us that is of a level of awareness and depth more than me as a person. And it's the force that animates me. And that, in fact, to me, that's really what we're all doing here. It's like each soul manifests or gives birth into a human form to have certain experiences that actually help that soul evolve. Because the souls are all evolving too. We have this sense of growth, but that's a reflection of what's in the soul. Because the souls are trying to understand, who am I, what am I doing here, what is it I need to learn. And so we're like the vehicles through which the experiences that the soul wants in order for it to evolve can occur. I recently came up with the analogy of, or it was presented to me, let's put it that way, of an actor. And you have a famous actor that's an incredibly good actor. And the incredibly good actors so embody the characters that they are portraying that we lose the distinction between that this is a person pretending to be a character, and we are moved by the character. And so the analogy that came to me was that over the course of that actor's lifetime, they're going to be in a number of movies. And because they're that kind of actor, we're going to get moved by most of their movies because that's what they do. They inhabit these characters. And this kind of correlates to the relationship between a person and the soul, because the soul is like the actor that is having, and each character or movie that they're playing is like a lifetime. And so they're, during the time they're making the movie, they're thoroughly engrossed in being that character. But there comes a time when that movie is over. But the actor themselves has been affected by the characters that they're playing. In other words, they've learned things or had experiences during the making of the film that have changed them as a person. And so this, I think, is a pretty good analogy to the soul. You know, the limitations of it are the actor dies, the soul does not die. But the point is that the actor is affected by the experiences that they go through while playing the character. And the cumulative experience of all of the characters that they have played affects their life, just as in the soul, the cumulative effect of all of the lifetimes that have been experienced is guiding the soul's evolution. The awareness of all the lifetimes exists within the soul. We, you know, for people that are tuned into that, or it's something that I think we in general collectively don't necessarily pay a whole lot of attention to that perspective. But if we tune into it, I mean, I can feel things at times that are clearly coming from other lifetimes, like memories and so forth. I don't see them all the time and all this, but I get enough of it that I'm aware that this exists. It's like existing on two levels of awareness simultaneously, which I feel is what the evolution of the human being or species is leading towards, where we're going to be fully engaged in being a human being, and at the same time also have an awareness that I'm part of a bigger picture simultaneously. And I feel like that's where we're evolving towards. And so, that personally, I feel that the evolution is really accelerating right now, which is why it feels like things are going crazy sometimes, because there's a lot of resistance to the uncertainty and the unknown. Humanly, we like to know what's going on. Most of us like consciously or unconsciously like repetitive patterns because we feel safe within the patterns that we know, which is why, to me, like even people that are in pretty dysfunctional situations, or perhaps were born in pretty dysfunctional situations, it's strange because we know that there's something, not right about it. And yet it also, on another level, feels normal because it's been our experience. And so we're repeating and repeating. And sometimes, if that's the background, even the thought of changing behavior or learning how to change behavior and stepping out of that can feel a little scary because it's not known, it's unknown. The nature of life and the soul, which to me is kind of, I'm not widely knowledgeable about Buddhism, but I do know that the essence of Buddhism is that everything is temporary. It comes and it goes. I would say to that, things go because when the soul has learned the lesson that was intended from the particular experiences that are going, then they end. But our culture is based on certainty, sameness, and trying to hold on to everything out of a sense of security. And it's the contrast between that creates a lot of the issues. That, to me, is where the shadow that we're going to be talking about arises, because we have emotions, feelings, thoughts, desires that are out of alignment with the values that we profess. So I want to be representing this, or I want people to see me as this, because that's the way I want to see myself. And then there are parts that are not aligned to that. I have things that are, very idealistic and equality and all together and, fairness and all this. And I have places that arise at times that kind of shock me that are not aligned to that. And so, or it can be the other way around. If a person is coming from a constricted sort of belief system, this is the right way, the only way. Some of the religions tend in that direction. This is the way and the only way, and this is the way it needs to be. So then, if I'm subscribing to that, and I find places inside myself that are desiring things that are not at all within that parameter of what I'm being told is the path, is the way to God, what am I supposed to do with that? So we push it down, and often enough, just off the top of my head, if I have some, if I'm a very devout religious kind of person and I have some kind of rather unusual sexual desires or thoughts that come up, or not unusual, but not aligned with that. So what do I do with this? And most of us will stuff it. And that's where projection comes in, because when I see somebody that is exhibiting behaviors that I myself have places that have an attraction towards, I got to reject them because I'm rejecting it in myself. I can't look at this in myself. This is the essence of the shadow to me, is that the conditionings that we've received from birth, people who have loved us have told us this is good and this is bad, and you can't do this and you can't do that. No, my personal example, I was labeled as an angry child. I was an angry child. And I lived in a house where my parents, I don't think I ever saw them angry at each other.
Hmm.
I don't think they didn't express anger. Now, I don't know anybody that never feels anger. So the point is, if you never feel anger, it's not like you don't get angry. It's like you're doing something with the anger to keep from feeling it. So in a situation like that, if I'm a child who is exhibiting anger, I am carrying out the elephant in the living room.
Right.
And so, I got labeled. And I was angry, and I was never taught really how to have appropriate anger. So I used to blow up and act out at times. My composure is pretty calm, and so I just kind of move along, but you push me past a certain point, which doesn't happen very often, look out. So I was not okay with being angry because I got labeled for being angry. So it's taken me many years to really come to a place of understanding there's such a thing as that anger is not a bad thing. In my family, it was a bad thing. You didn't want it around. And then I also learned people don't like angry people. So you don't want it around that way either. And yet it's there. And so it comes to learning that anger is coming up is actually a form of protection. That's the point of anger, is that something is not right. And there's a need for me to speak up or speak out because something's going on that isn't working for me. But without any, so we say, lessons or guidance in how to, blowing up at somebody, which means blowing up to me basically means having stuffed anger for a long time. So it's all built up. So when it does finally come out, it's like boom, boom. But that there's a healthy way to express anger, which is using I statements. I am not shaming and blaming. But again, I was raised where people shamed and blamed me, and they didn't, I had good parents, but they weren't emotionally aware because their parents weren't emotionally aware. And this has been going on, goes back to the biblical days and before. And so I feel like a huge part of the work in the world at this time is those of us that are tuned in and want to do this for the healing and a better, more a kinder world and a more caring world, is learning how to become okay with all the parts of ourselves, which is the shadow, the parts that I don't want to acknowledge even exist. Why don't I want to acknowledge they exist? Because when I feel them underneath that, I feel terrible about myself, that I have these parts, that I am defective, wrong, the problem, clueless, whatever. And it's incredibly painful to feel those feelings. So instead of feeling those feelings, we everyone has their own strategy for dealing with it. Common ones are either to fight back. Well, that's a fight freeze, flight, fight, flight, freeze instincts. These are the different strategies. I'm either going to shut down and use it against myself, or I'm going to strike back and throw it in somebody else's face. But the more mature approach, which needs to be learned, is how to be kind to myself, how to little by little learn to, because it turns out that these hurt and wounded places that I'm stuffing, and I'm saying I, but you know, it's, I think the majority of people have their own version of what I'm talking about. It manifests in different ways. I'm finding that these are actually tend to be hurt places from childhood, what they call the inner child, or at the different ages of the inner child, because the child was innocent when they were little. I mean, they did things, you know, that are, some of them aren't that great, but they're little kids. They don't know. And the way they got chastised or treated for this, which really didn't have anything, had more to do with their caretakers than it did with them. And so these parts didn't get some of what they wanted, which is oftentimes love, acceptance, you know, I'm afraid, you know, comfort me, about all that. So they haven't gotten this in their life, because lo and behold, we tend to attract into our life people that had similar patterns to what we grew up with. And so the learning starts becoming, oh, these parts of me that I don't like, they have reasons for being the way that they are. And parts of me are mature enough now as an adult that I can hold the space for what they want. So instead of saying, shut up, go to your room, metaphorically, I can say, oh, I can see that you're feeling really hurt. And I can see I haven't been that great about showing up for you in those places, but I really want to develop a relationship with you.
Mm.
And you can, you know, you can let me know, like when you're afraid or scared or angry about something or other, I'm going to change the way I respond to you, because I want to know you. I want to protect you, and I want you to feel safe.
Mm.
And this is kind of the transformation, because in these places are the places where we tend to feel the worst about ourselves. You know, the inner critic. I mean, I have a very big inner critic. And, you know, I fought with the darn thing for forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I start realizing it's actually been trying to help me in the best way it knew how. But because of its own wounds, it doesn't give me a break a lot of the time. So, and I've tried fighting with it. I've read people talking about, you stop listening to it, you know, you stand back, and there's something to that, but I just keep finding more and more and more the best way of dealing with any of these parts of ourselves is to find a place in me where I can really feel love for them, compassion, understanding, instead of denying them or taking them as an enemy. They're like hurt, you know, that's my inner fight. All these parts that are fighting with each other, that they all have their place. And this is not, I mean, I don't find this as easy. It's very painful at times, and it's slow at times. But I do find that over time, that it is really resolving a lot of deeply held issues. I used to feel like, you know, you could get to a certain point where you know, you've done enough work, and they were healed, and you didn't feel these things anymore.
Mhm.
And I just see more and more they're not going to go away. But what's going to change is I change my relationship to them.
Mhm.
And as I get into a kinder relationship with them, they start to relax.
As you're talking just now, I'm thinking of Chiron. I don't know if that feels relevant to speak to at all from your perspective.
Sure.
I'm thinking about, my real question is, what in your life, what has helped, that's in the realm of any kind of thing that has helped. Because you happen to be an evolutionary astrologer, and I also happen to study evolutionary astrology, I'm thinking of all the archetypes, right? And I'm curious what your relationship has been to them, and if they in any way have helped you or not helped you with embracing the shadow or healing around it, or but you can answer that question anyway. You don't have to speak to the archetypes.
Sure. For anybody listening that has some awareness of astrology, I just happen to have Chiron 2 degrees in my first house,
Right. Exactly.
right on my ascendant,
Yep.
which is basically, I have a saying about various things, and one of them is that there are gifts that at times feel like a curse. And that particular placement doesn't necessarily make for an easy life.
And I'll just say I have Chiron on my south node, so
there you go.
Yeah.
Another strong signature. So Chiron, for those that don't know, is the symbol of our deepest wounds. And it's a comet that came into our solar system in the 1970s, and astrologers correlated it over time that it corresponds to our deepest wounds. And, my relationship with astrology and charts and things like that is, I don't believe anymore there's such a thing as a bad chart. I don't think there are bad aspects or transits. There are transits, and in fact, I probably will never write this book, but the title of the book is Transits Are Your Friends. All of them.
Beautiful.
They are, I've come around. I did not feel this way at all, what I'm about to say, for most of my life, but I've really come around to see that everything that happens in my life really is and has been for my benefit. And some of those things have been very painful, and I'm including them in it. And I am not talking about fake new age. I won't say fake. I'm not talking about new age kind of, I'm so grateful for the fact that, blah, 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 like 3 days after it happens, because it doesn't come like that. It's that sometimes years after I've had this experience, that an extremely difficult period in my life, that some years later, finding myself going, because of all of what happened there, I have become a person that I am much happier and being, and feel grateful that I have been allowed to become what I feel I am now. And without all those things I went through, I can see that this could not have happened. It required all of those difficult experiences. And believe me, that is not the way I felt when they were going on. And it's kind of like that. People, I'll delve a little into astrology. Saturn gets a bad rap among a lot of people, because Saturn is stern in a way. But I've come to see Saturn as Saturn is like a friend you have that cares enough about you that they're going to tell you the truth, even when you don't want to hear it. And it's not truth being told in a way where they're throwing it in your face or shaming you. It's just, you know, here's some stuff that you need to deal with. And dealing with it is good for you, even though it's going to be really painful at times. And so it's kind of like transforming one's relationship to the type of experiences that we have. Actually, this is a good place to bring in. I am more and more of the belief, perspective, that we actually incarnate into human bodies because there are difficulties here, pain, suffering, because those experiences are not the same on the other side. It's more gentle and more relaxed. And it's kind of like coming here is like signing up to go to boot camp. And it's on purpose that our evolution is accelerated here. And we're either going to evolve, or in some ways it's going to wipe us out. Now, I want to be careful. I don't mean literally kill us or anything like that, but it can be a lot. It can really be a lot. And I think it's really important to honor the courage that it takes to even become a human being, and especially to become a human being who, in spite of everything that's going on around, and maybe because of everything that's going on around, that puts himself on a path of wanting to grow, evolve, be kind, become more gracious, more gentle, more compassionate in the face of all of the extremes that are here. And I think that's really a large part of the point, especially of the times that we're moving into now. And I mean, it's being a human being is a lot. It's taken me a long time to really be able to own this or say it. It's like each of us, to me, we deserve a lot of credit for being who we have become. It has not been easy at times. And yet, in a lot of ways or cases, the difficulties or challenges actually strengthen our resolve. Now you have a lot of people that, are, not everybody's going to get it. I'll say it that way. Not everybody's going to get it. There's some people, I think of like these people that have been the perpetrators of these recent shooting sprees. And it's like, what kind of experiences does someone have had to go through to respond in that way?
Yeah.
The very overriding of the whole sense of humanness, humanity, and all this. And I mean, I obviously don't condone it in any way, shape, or form, but the point of it is that hating, and I deal with my own hates, but hating, I realize more and more, is not really a solution, because all that is again an outlet for the unexpressed anger. that we carry about the way things are. And there's a lot that is really, really difficult for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yet, it's there. And so what do I do with it? And I have no answer that I can say, here's what you do with it, folks. But it's very, I think one thing is the very fact that we have all these people talking on this symposium, delivering a very different message. You're not seeing the message that most of us are delivering very much on, CNN, NBC News. You're definitely not seeing it on Fox News. But we're galvanized in a way of coming up with a response. How do you respond? How do you react to all of this stuff in a way that is constructive? And in other words, in a way, it leaves us to leave some of our own conditioning or our own stuff behind. In terms of the parts, I think we're all entitled and intended to have a personal life where we can do things we enjoy and so forth. But because of the difficulties, it's like there's some sort of internal calling. Like I can't just living my little life and ignoring all the rest of it, just doesn't fulfill. It doesn't make sense. Getting utterly depressed about it doesn't help either, although I think there are periods where that's actually a necessary thing. That can be part of dealing with the shadow, because depression is part of the shadow, where it's despair. I've lost my sense of purpose or meaning. I think those are the periods where we're being purged of what no longer works. When I was talking about the soul perspective, which is when things that I don't want to go out of my life, go out of my life. It can be deaths of people. It can be, me getting some kind of serious medical condition, whatever. We don't like that. We don't like the sense of loss. But the growing realization for me is things only leave my life when they no longer support or serve. In other words, if everything is coming into my life to help me learn or grasp certain things, well, after I have learned or grasped them, there's not really a purpose anymore for those same things to be in my life other than I like them. But the gist of life is to grow, to evolve, which is what all the change is about. And so it's not like the moment that I've got something down, it's, life is compassionate. It's not like it's whisked out of my life and, I'll go, get on with the next thing. I mean, it's not like that. It's transitional. Generally speaking, it's transitional. But we go through phases and periods in life, and things that we have been doing and feeling very identified with, this not just what I do, but it's part of who I am, how I see myself and all this. And at certain times they start fading away. Now there are transits, that's one of the things I find astrology is very helpful for, because it can point out, I pay more attention to the long-term transits than the day-to-day. Today you're going to feel up and high. I mean, it's equivalent to me, like, oh, it's 80 and sunny, and then 2 days later it's 50 and cloudy. I probably feel more emotionally uplifted on the sunny day than the cloudy day, but the cloudy day also brings me inside where I can feel my feelings along that line. So that's always changing. But the longer term transits where by the nature of the transit that the person is going to be going through large changes and over an extended period of time, because they're slower moving planets. We're talking about years, not months or weeks. And out of that comes profound change. And again, we don't know. Like, uncertainty sets our biology off, because the body, the cells themselves go, uncertainty means, I could die. That's the bottom line. I could die, which I feel is why we tend to grasp at things and try to hold on to them. I know for myself, when I have these parts of, I need to know, and I don't know, so it's clearly not time in the big picture. It's not time for me to know yet. But it's very interesting, because if I want a yes/no decision on something, and if I wanted a yes, and it winds up in the end that it's a no, it's easier for me to take the no than it was to take the not knowing whether it was yes or no.
Yeah.
That's the uncertainty. And our biology reacts to that because we don't feel safe in it.
Yes.
So the other part that I'm finding of learning to see life from the soul perspective, which is, I started with the concept that everything that happens to me is helping me and so forth. I didn't necessarily believe it emotionally, but as I followed with that over a number of years, I'm getting more and more what I would call evidence that is true. And so in other words, it's permeating or sinking in. I guess you could say it's sinking into the cellular structure. So the cells themselves, when change is up, feel more relaxed than they used to, less anxiety. It's still anxiety because it's like, I don't know, it's uncertain. But there's an equally growing sense from inside, not here, but here, that, well, I don't know what this is next, but maybe it's the next stage in my unfolding. And I've experienced it enough times that I know that in the long run, it's good for me. So I'm better able to endure it. Endure is a good word. Endure it when it's really uncomfortable. Because otherwise, especially when we're younger and don't have as much experience with this stuff, I mean, we basically want what we want when we want it. And when it doesn't happen that way, it's very disappointing. It's easy to try to make it somebody else's fault. If only they had this or not done that. But I don't know. It's like there's this maturing that goes on where you realize, despite not being the way I would like it all the time, that it's just unfolding and I can make my peace with it. Now, one of the things I've learned is that every time I've, quote, made some progress, which is true. I mean, where I'm changing old patterns that I've had difficulty with, where I'm, that the first sign of changing a pattern I have learned is noticing that I have the pattern, because the great majority of this stuff is unconscious. It's our automatic responses. That includes emotions and actions. I don't even know I have it. I didn't know my strategy when I feel challenged or threatened is tended to be to defend, to push back, to argue. And even just what I did. So then I started noticing, oh, look what I do. I find I don't all I really need to do is notice it, and like it knows how to correct itself over time. I don't have to do all this work to, sometimes I have to remember or like notice again, oh look, I'm in that old pattern again. All right, let me take a breath here. Let me calm down. Maybe I need 10 minutes to myself to get back, but because I want to change these patterns. And so that's my inner commitment. So that also operates on the unconscious level. It's kind of countering the deeper patterns, the automatic responses. And this is how I'm finding, or one of the ways I'm finding, to embrace my shadow. The shadow is simply the parts of myself that operate in me that I'm not aware operate there. And it can be, repressed emotions. It can work the other way also. It can be really wonderful talents and desires that I have that I feel inadequate to embrace. And that's shadow. It's not all negative, dreary stuff. It's whatever I can embrace, and the underlying cause of this seems to be ways that we have developed to knock ourselves down, to think I'm whatever, I'm bad, I'm wrong, I'm stupid, I don't get this, I shouldn't have done this, I shouldn't have done that. I'll say, here, I'll be a little self-revelatory again. I've had a couple of experiences recently where something happened with a person and I didn't hear from them for some period of time about something. And I created a scenario in my own mind where they were upset with me. And I was tuning in and I could tell they were upset with me. And then so I started getting defensive going back. And I finally heard from them, and nothing that I had dreamed up was the case at all. They didn't feel any of that about me. It was shocking. I just had one of my astrology clients I hadn't heard from in much since the pandemic. We used to we have a real appreciation for each other. And she's older and she's having a return that only happens late in life. And I wrote back to her and I said, you'll be the first one of these, you'll be the first reading I've done with this return in it. And I didn't hear from her for a week. And then so I created a reality in my mind where she realized that I had no experience doing this kind of reading and she didn't want anything to do with me.
Right, I'm sure.
So
Sure.
I got the response and back. It was like, she actually said, no, I didn't get your email for some reason, because a week later, I just followed up with her. She said, I don't know what happened, but I didn't get your email until the same day I got this second one. And I want you to know I'm really excited to be your first client that's having this
See,
return. So I'm
wow.
like, I mean, I'm looking at myself like, look at how I have the tendency to look at things. And my mind, my brain takes this stuff totally seriously. Like, this is it, and I go into defense mode and all this. And what it's showing me is I now have to put a check when I start feeling that way. I I now begin, I need to check out what I'm feeling
Mhm.
because I just experienced I can be completely wrong. And what I have thought was intuition.
Right.
So it's just been very um, and in the not that long ago, I probably never would have mentioned this in public because it makes me look dumb, but I don't feel that way anymore. It's like I can share this. And one reason I'm sharing it is because I'm clearly not the only person that has this tendency or issue. And so
Pretty
in
much
sharing,
everybody. Mhm.
right. So in sharing this, it's like, hey, it's okay. It's okay that I'm like this, that I've looked at things this way. And in due time, little by little, I can and will change it by not taking what my critic presents to me at face value every time. In other words, it's not always right, even though it tells me it's always right,
Mhm.
but it's not. And so um, these are the ways, or some of the ways that I am embracing my own shadow. It's, this is another one of my things is like, if 7 billion people all have certain of the same, traits, hurts, wounds, whatever, this cannot be a mistake.
Interesting.
It's like there's something in the species.
Hmm.
And and another piece that I've been coming up with during the pandemic is we sometimes think like I need to be running around doing all this big stuff
Yeah.
because I want to help the world and help heal the world and all this. And, I had a number of times realizations, me sitting on my couch and sitting in this kind of energy like I'm talking about and being kind to myself is changing and adding the collective field on the planet. Because there really are millions of us. I mean, millions and millions of us. Next to billions, it's not hugely, it's small, but I'm definitely not, we're not alone. And there's way more people seeking and waking up in ways large and small than I tend to realize. And it's our collective actions. We're responding to what's going on the planet. This is the energies that are going on the planet, in my opinion. The planet is waking up. It's almost like a springtime.
Hmm.
And um, that very fact, and because of what it asks of everybody and what you have to let go of in order to embrace it. So there's people that are terrified of this, and they double down, they triple down. I got, I'm worth $982 billion and I'm impervious to the things that affect everybody else, blah, blah, blah. Or, my religion is the one, or not to pick on it, my politics are the one, whatever. But there's no certainty in it because we're moving into realms, spaces, personal places that we have never been before. The planet is moving into spaces it has not been, or humanity, it has not been before. That's what's going on.
So what, can you say, I'm curious to hear your perspective on what is going on? What do you
The
think we're
waking,
getting
the
into?
consciousness is rising. The soul awareness is, if you come to the point where it's a common, everyday, matter of fact knowing, and we'll just talk about people and leave out animals and bugs and birds for the moment, but that we're all one and the same. If we are operating from that awareness on a mass scale, and we're walking around and finding people in the street that don't have a place to live and don't have food and don't have this and are highly traumatized and all this, we would, I don't know what exactly we would do, but we wouldn't look at them as the other.
Right.
We wouldn't exclude them.
Right.
I mean, every people in those states also are going through their soul awakening, and they need to be in them for reasons we can't see, but they don't need scorn and rejection. If anything, they need acceptance. And that doesn't mean to get codependent and, allow things to occur that you wouldn't let anyone else occur. But it's kind of a change in attitude. We would have a totally different attitude. We wouldn't be bombing other countries because I feel insecure or I think my country's better than your country.
Right.
And all of this. So that's where I think we're going. I don't think this is, it's not, I'm not going to see a vastly different world in my lifetime, but I already in a way see a vastly different world in my lifetime. It's not from where I started, but it's not, we're not all going to be walking around, by the end of my life, holding hands and, feeling love by billions of people. It's not going to move that fast, but that's where we're heading. Actually, I should tell I found an article recently about interviews with celebrities, 20 celebrities, about what they would say to their teenage selves if they were able to talk to their teenage selves. And the one I liked the most was from Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, basketball player, who was very strong in his career on standing up for racial equality, among other things. And, basically what he said is, hey, it's really important that you do what you're setting out to do. It's going to be a lot harder than you think it is. And you're not going to see as much progress as you believe you would or would like to see. But the point of it is that what you do in your life becomes the foundation or starting point for the generations to come.
Yeah.
So we're building, you have to look at it from the soul perspective in order to really get this, because if it's looked at from the personal perspective of like, well, what do I get out of this? Well, that ego, that personality may not get anything out of it. What they may get out of it is in trouble. But we're building something, we're building a brighter, more aware, kinder, more compassionate, more loving future from the steps that we're taking every day right now. And it's not going to be recognized by a lot of people. And it's something we got to know in here. This is what I am drawn to do, intended to do. And there are many, many, many of us that feel that way. So that to me is what's going on.
Yeah.
We're coming to these crisis points, climate and many other ways. Living the way we have been living literally becomes physically impossible. It cannot go on. And the likelihood of a lot of very tragic, painful, suffering events on mass scales is pretty high.
Well,
It's like when, if the whole coastal area in Florida is going underwater, or Manhattan or whatever,
mhm,
that's going to affect a lot of people. You
right,
can't say for certain that's going to occur, but there's a lot of predictions from a lot of very smart people that may occur.
right. Um, as I've been listening to you, and uh, as I've been recording these talks and now listening to you, it's like something's gelling for me, which is, I think the big overarching theme of most of the symposium is around returning to wholeness from the dualities, like the illusory dualities that we've been living with for however long, thousands of years. And I love your definition of the shadow. I can't remember exactly your words, but it's what you said, whatever it is we don't want to, what did you say?
Yeah, whatever we don't, I don't know what I said.
Okay.
Whatever, whatever we don't want to embrace or own.
Look at or something. Yeah.
Yeah,
Something, yeah.
It's
Right. Including,
it's the parts in us that, most of us want to be good, quote, good people, which means we want to embrace and act from the places that we were taught as children are what good people do, and
right.
so forth. But a lot of those definitions are very limited. I mean, in terms of the themes here, I mean, the way that women were looked at when I was a little kid is way different than the way it is now.
Yeah.
And to be a good little kid, you were taught to look at things that way. It's the same with sexual orientation, racial issues, equality, and so forth. We have these conditionings. I mean, they literally, I say it like they put it in the water. It's like dosing the water with fluoride or something. I mean, because of our culture, it's dosed with racism. It's dosed with misogyny.
Right.
It's in the air. And so even though I stand for any and everything but that,
Right.
those places are in me. I'm a white male.
Right.
And, I don't even want the stuff.
Right.
I don't even know it's there, but it's there. And so it's kind of like just, so that's in my shadow, because I don't want to be that. It's not like I want to run around being a racist or a misogynist, and I'm not. But it's kind of like, can I understand that? Yes, of course, those places are in me because of the conditioning that I've experienced in my life. And I need to embrace them because they're separating me from other humans.
Right. And life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I'm getting, when I was told by the spirit world to hold this symposium regarding gender and sexuality, but with the clear understanding that healing our relationship to gender and sexuality is really connected to every version of healing that's needed on this planet. And it's obvious, and yet it's also dawning on me and clicking for me in this moment as I'm listening to you, that it's really the reason that connection is there is because it's all of this healing that we need is about, again, repairing the illusion of separation, the illusion of being other than anything really, including our shadow, like including that experience in ourselves of pushing away certain things and embracing other things. Just
Yeah.
even if we like, I think what you're trying to say is, and again, you can use your own words, but that coming back into wholeness with all of who we are inside is absolutely key to us being able to embrace the wholeness of anything and everything out there. And if we don't, even if we want to be not racist and not misogynist and not destructive to our planet and all of these things, if we're still separating even these unconscious things in ourselves about ourselves, we can't then be coming from a sense of wholeness really with anything else. There's going to be still some reverberation of separation if we're separating in ourselves in any way.
It's to me, it's conditioning. It's like there is, Jeffrey Wolf Green called, the EA founder, called it natural law, which is, what it means is we are the way we really are. And all this other stuff is not who we really are. It's learned behavior. The natural is we are aware of the oneness. We are aware of the different expressions, diversity of expressions, all this, and that, it's all the same. There are very few, there are cultures on the planet, and I don't know all of them, but, off the top of my head, there's a lot of this in India and Tibet and so forth. But the irony is, in India, it's very misogynistic. And yet
patriarchy, yeah.
So the point of it is there aren't any cultures that fully embrace this at this point in time. It's been thousands of years. That's why, to me, it's going to take a really long time for massive change and embracing. But it's like I was saying, one thing builds on the next, builds on the next, builds on the next. So what we're doing now is really, really, really important. Because if we don't do it now, it's not going to happen later.
Right.
We are doing it now. And we're going to be doing it now more and more. To me, one of the things about climate change and economics and the material structures that we have breaking down is this creates various amounts of disillusionment, despair, anger, and all this, where depression. What is depression? To me, it's like there's some soul searching that needs to occur because things aren't working and I don't know how to do it. So I just shut down. That's depression. But it is the difficulties, the pain, the hardships that we need to survive that go, where we can have very large paradigm breakthroughs. I'm not, my psychedelic days are long over, but there's a lot of talk now. Psychedelics, and I don't advocate them or disadvocate them. I know from personal experience, they blew up a lot of conditioning or blind spots in me. Maybe this becomes part of what happens. I don't know. What I know is we need, and we are being put in situations where it will occur, where what we believe that isn't truly who we are, that we think is who we are, is going to be cracking apart. I should bring in also the caterpillar and the butterfly, which is one of my favorite metaphors. I'll put it this way, a few years ago. I mean, the importance of it is the way to look at it is the caterpillar has no idea it's a butterfly. It has no idea. It's just going around living its life, going to work every day, so to speak. And then all of a sudden, this impulse comes over it. We might call it depression, right? It doesn't want to do anything anymore. It starts building this thing around itself. It has no idea why it's doing it. The piece that came to me a few years ago, which I love saying, which nobody ever told me, is when the caterpillar is in the cocoon, this came to me. I don't know if it's true, but metaphorically it's true. The caterpillar is in there. We think it's just turning into a butterfly. It's screaming at God. What are you doing to me?
Maybe so.
It's so we don't think about that. And so I use this because the pandemic to me is like a cocoon. There are transits that are like cocoons. We cannot act. We don't have the energy to act. We don't have the desire to act. And then because we live in this do culture, then we're sitting around judging ourselves, blaming ourselves, calling ourselves lazy, not doing anything, blah, 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 when we're going through deep, necessary periods of transformation that really require time out, sometimes extended times out. And our culture does not allow this, does not value this. You can see that can be more shadow stuff like, I need to do this, but I'm not going to allow myself to do it because my conditioning tells me I have to go achieve, work, save the world, whatever. So yes, it is. It's not to me, it's more like not that what I have to embrace, it's that life is chipping this stuff away from me. I don't have to do anything except survive it. I just have to stay in the game, so to speak. It just happens because it's our individual destiny. If we're going to wake up, we're going to become aware of the places within us that are not aligned with who I truly am. I'm totally convinced on my conditioning. How am I going to know what I actually am? And so life is chipping it away, right? And we have parts inside of us that are fighting back against that. I don't want it chipped. I don't want this to happen. I think evolution is becoming more aware that there's a process here that is going on. And I'm not in charge of it. It is happening to me by a force that really, really deeply cares about me and who I am. And I just need to allow it to occur. And I need to know that I'm not going to like it all the time. I'm going to be scared at times. I'm going to be angry at times. And all of that is okay. I don't need to change one thing about it. I just allow it to occur. Every once in a while, I get a glimpse of a clarity. That's what I started saying before. I think this is important. We get in these grooves and we're having growth. And then all of a sudden, it feels like I'm backsliding because more of the same crap is coming up. And it's like, oh, I'm screwing up again. No. When, as has been drilled in my head, when stuff is coming up, it's coming up for healing. This conditioning is layer on top of layer on top of layer on top of layer. And as I embrace the chipped away parts of a layer, before too long, it seems to come back, but it's really at a deeper level. It's actually a sign I've done good work. I've actually made the change. And, the more stuff arising is actually a sign that I'm able to deal with even more of it now. This is a very different way of looking at it. And, it's not where I started at all. But I'm learning this is a manifestation of life is truly on my side. Life wants to give me to get back to awareness of myself, of who and what I truly am. And life is like a very compassionate mother. It knows that it's really hard at times for the little kids. It has a lot of compassion. It's like, it is not berating us. It is not punishing us. It is not, it's not making life hard because I screwed up and I don't deserve to have things that feel good. That approach is kind of like what I said before about my believing that somebody was all upset at me. It's like, that's our projection, because that's the way even our religions have told us this. If you don't do it right, you're going to hell or whatever. We're not being punished. We're being evolved. We're a very beneficent force. And all this work is about having the experience more and more step by step of, oh, wow, that's actually true. It's not enough to get it here, but it starts by ingesting a way of thinking. But that then has to get turned into my actual reality, which occurs over time. I've made some progress. There's a lot left. But it's come to the point in me where it has affected the way I look at my life on an ongoing basis a lot of the time, which is, I have a lot of gratitude for that.
Wonderful. I'm wondering one last thing. I don't know if you have other things you want to share, but
yeah, only what you want.
Well, I was just curious what you would like to say about how this whole perspective affects the way you work with people. And, anything you want to say, but people often come to helper people, especially astrologers, and say, what's my answer about XYZ? And should I get married on this day? And I don't know, very, very concrete. They have very concrete questions that they want answers to. And I can guess what your answer would be to this, but yeah.
I never did a lot of that. I don't like making predictions and that sort of thing, primarily because I found out they're wrong 90% of the time. But also getting people's hopes up about things that they want to hear. I tend to point people back to themselves, and I tend to try to steer conversation in the directions that I've been speaking about here. I don't usually have as much time as I've had here, but it's kind of like, what if there's no such thing as a wrong day for you to get married?
There you go. Yep.
What if you feel strong? I point people back to their intuition.
Yep.
Basically.
Same. Yes.
Like maybe life's telling you to get married on Friday the 13th while Mercury is retrograde. Maybe that's what you need.
Friday the 13th used to be a revered thing in goddess cultures or something. I don't know. I'm sure somewhere.
There
right?
you go.
I don't know. Yeah.
It's kind of like, I'll say this, years ago, when I first moved west, I used to journal quite a bit in those days. And I sat on my bed one day wondering about wanting to know the answer to something or other along that line. And these words came out of my pen, which I have never forgotten. And I didn't take them as judgmental. Your incessant need to know the outcome in advance keeps you separated from the poetry and mystery of life.
Wow.
When you go to the movies, do you want to read the script first? This is what came out of my pen.
Wow.
Didn't come from me, not
Right,
from Conscious Steve.
Yeah.
And I have never forgotten that.
That's hilarious. And I probably need to be hearing that too.
So it's like, the uncertainty is part of the whole experience. And that's how we learn. Honestly, I feel like that's how we learn to trust. Let me put it this way, you know that I just spoke at a big conference. And so it was the first time that I've spoken at a conference like that. And I found all kinds of anxiety arising in me for the few days because I was talking on the last day, of course. And it was a very interesting experience because I wound up feeling very happy with the way the talk went. I was trying to write it all out, and the words didn't. Usually, I get the words and they flow, but that wasn't happening. But I was giving the talk, and all of a sudden the stream took over. The stream is like what I've been in since you asked me one question. I've been talking ever since. That's what happens. And it was a very different experience because I saw from there, and then yesterday I read an article about this very thing, that even professional speakers, or many professional speakers, before they're speaking at a big gig, feel anxiety and uncertainty and doubt. And, it really brought home for me, like, it's not something that, I don't want to feel that way, but it's part of the process of something new. When it's a stretch, of course, I'm going to feel that. I'm taken out of my known. And what I've gotten from this is it's actually a sign that I'm doing something good. Reminds me, I heard Brene Brown talking about something last year. And she basically said, every time that I go out to talk, she's a, international speaker. Every time I go out to talk before the talk, I feel scared shitless, she said. And it's like, because our human, see, I don't know that. I feel the anxiety, and then where I go is there's something wrong with me. Because if I only knew what I was doing, I wouldn't feel the anxiety, blah, blah, blah. It's like these things, that's a biological response, basically. The body feels like something bad could happen. And that's what the anxiety is about. So it's kind of like becoming aware of that, which I'm really in the early, stages of, can help me change my relationship to it. I don't need to make it go away. I don't need to take Xanax. I just need to realize that when I'm doing something that's going to be a stretch, it's likely I'm going to feel some anxiety about it. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to screw up, even though, parts of me are telling me I'm going to make a fool of myself or whatever. It just comes with the territory. And it's actually a sign of expanding or growing. And so I can learn to live with that. I would say that's part of the shadow we're talking about. I can have a relationship with the part that's feeling the anxiety is it's feeling personally afraid, but it also is wanting me to feel safe and to be safe. So it's trying to do something. It's telling me, hey, I'm scared. But I can learn to respond to that by saying, I get that you're scared, and don't worry, because everything's going to be okay. Whatever it is, whatever happens, it's like getting married on Friday the 13th. Whatever it is, whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and it's going to be okay. And it may be very different than what you think this should happen or you want to happen, but become okay with it. It's okay. Because nothing can happen to me that's not in my life flow. And I don't have to like any of it. That's the get out of jail free card. I'm not required to love it and have gratitude for it and all this when it's going on. But it's part of the process. And I can learn to be okay with those uncomfortable feelings. I can be, how did I say this sometimes? I can learn to be more comfortable about feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's like we're growing. And this is good stuff for where we're heading, because we're heading obviously into tremendous uncertainty and, politically, economically, climate-wise, all this. And yeah, some of it might be really difficult, but slow down, step by step, we're going to be okay. I also feel very much like I don't know that this is true, but I really feel more and more it's true. Nobody can die 1 minute before they're intended to die, and nobody can live 1 minute after they're intended to die. It's like known, and we don't know. It's the big unknown. Another thing with the soul perspective is you start losing the fear of death. Not that it goes away. The body has fear, I think, but we don't go anywhere. We're just going to a place where you can't be seen here. And there's still the same kind of energy, the same kind of desire, the same kind of determination, the same kind of love, the same kind of desire to assist and help. And so there's nothing, one thing every single 7 billion of us have in common, one of the few things, we are all going to die. And we don't know when. And so it's like becoming, okay, it's going to happen. This becomes fewer things to feel a lot of anxiety about. Little by little, by little by little. I say this, and probably at some point I'm going to get hit with the tremendous fear of dying that's in my shadow that I'm not feeling now. I don't know, but it's like embracing all of it. It's embracing all of it. It's like no matter what you're feeling, no matter how screwed up you are, even if you're feeling you want to go out with an AR-15 and if those are your feelings, like, I don't encourage carrying them out, but
no,
it's okay. You're feeling this. You're angry. You're angry. You're really angry. See, if we could be more okay with the anger, maybe it wouldn't act out in such outrageous ways. And maybe I'm an idealistic idiot by saying that, but I just know that the behaviors that we can't stand are people that are really, really, really wounded and hurting.
Absolutely. Yeah, and again, it's clicking for me the super obvious thing, which is embracing the shadow is really a major key component to the whole title of the symposium, which is Rebecoming the One, right?
Yes.
It's the same thing.
If I can't embrace those parts of myself, that are in the people that you're, being inclusive of in here. If I can't embrace it in myself, how can I possibly embrace it in people that represent those things that I can't embrace? It's not, how can I love anyone any more than I love myself?
Right.
But without being very codependent about it.
Right.
And that's why I feel this inner work is almost like the precursor to the external events that is more the focus of what you're talking about.
Right.
So, and they can go on at the same time.
Yeah.
I can be working for a better external world, but I need to be working for a better external me, internal me, at the same time.
Right. Yeah. I
Because
mean,
if I'm doing all that outer work because I want to avoid my shadow and I'm keeping myself too busy to feel it, I can't. That's the problem we have in the world right there.
right.
So in order, if I want to change the way things are done, I got to just start on the inside.
Right. And I hear a lot of justifiable, understandable complaints about, from people who are more in the activist world saying, well, to sit and do inner work is a really highly privileged position to be in. And it's perhaps not really actually doing anything. And I hear that. I really hear that. I hear that. I get it. I do think it is highly privileged. You and I sitting here are highly privileged people on this planet, that we can be sitting here taking the time to have a Zoom conversation and recording it on embracing the shadow. It's a very privileged position. Yes. So I don't disagree. And I also think it needs to be a dance, like the inner healing and the outer healing. It's not like one or other is best. And I think people can't, the only person who can know what the right dance is for each of us is ourselves. So like I have times when I need to go way internal, to go way into that cocoon. There is no way I could serve the planet right this minute in any way other than being in my cocoon. And then I've had other times in my life when I'm a social worker and I am doing social justice outreach and I'm whatever, very external. And then I would say at this point in my life, I'm both. I'm dancing pretty evenly between both. But yeah.
I think that different people are called to different functions, and that
Yes.
we're all on the same team.
Yes.
And that's the point where the primarily externally oriented people perhaps have something to understand about the inner, and vice versa, to realize that we're all approaching, I've said a few times to climate activists, if we solve all the climate problems tomorrow and they're all done, there's a consciousness or unconsciousness that has created the climate issues. So if we don't do anything about that unconsciousness, if we solved all the climate problems tomorrow, the same thing's going to manifest somewhere else.
All over. Yeah.
Because it's the awareness that is creating it in the first place. And this does not mean that people shouldn't be doing climate activist work.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's, it's both.
Yeah. Absolutely.
In my opinion.
I completely agree. Yeah. And anyway, that I just think it's funny that all of these incredibly obvious things are dawning on me sitting here as I'm talking to you. I've only been working on this symposium for the past 3 months, and I've only had that title sitting right in front of me for the past, 3 months. And now I'm getting the connection.
But see, this is the perfect example of what I was talking about this, the soul using the experiences that the human has in order to evolve the soul. So it's like one on a deeper level, perhaps part of your drive to put this together is because of what you're going to realize
Oh, absolutely.
as out of all of it, and from listening to all the people and the feedback and all that. And like, that's the point. I mean, to me, that's how we evolve. It's not just I want to serve the world.
Yeah.
And you know, because it's the right thing to do. It's that I mean, we all get something out of what we're doing, even if what we're doing is very altruistic.
Mhm.
That's the point. That's the point.
And I feel like
We've been talking to each
you and
other.
me. Yeah. So do you want to say anything about what you do, what you offer, what
Oh,
any
yeah. See, I've been so underground for a number of years. I mean, what I got from Norwalk is that it's time for me to appear.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of out of the loop. So let me, so I offer readings and what I call transformation guidance, which is, I don't do typical astrologer thing of telling you, you know, what day is the best day to buy your new car or that sort of thing. But for people who have felt an affinity with what I've been talking about, those are the type of people that tend to have sessions with me and find value in it, where it becomes more personalized to your specifics, your chart. And I also always want to know and receive from you some information about you, what's important to you, what you want to know, what you're working on, what's going on in your life, and so forth. I do 30-minute mini readings, and I do longer readings, which I usually don't have a set time on. They tend to run an hour and a half to 2 hours. My website is stevewolfson.com. It's wolf like the animal, son like your son and daughter, stevewolfson.com. And my very ancient website, which I do need to get updated, but it still pretty accurately describes what I do. I am very interested, and it's important to me to assist people in their unfolding and transformations, and to offer guidance through that as requested. I know that the path is sometimes of change is sometimes confusing or uncertain. And, you know, so if you feel after listening to me that there may be some value for you, you're welcome to get a hold of me, and we can connect and decide if I'm an appropriate person for you to speak with.
Wonderful.
And thank you for listening.
Thank you for being here, Steve.
You're welcome.